When I play up game and then talk, I'm trying, Jennifer.
Rip City. First and foremost, bear with me. As some of you may be able to tell, I'm feeling a little sick. But we're going to power through this because we've now missed. Well, we didn't miss 2 weeks in a row because Fawad went solo on us. But we missed last week, and we're definitely getting out a podcast this week. So bear with me, as you probably will hear me sniffle a couple times and sound. I got a much deeper voice now. So, all them ladies out there. I'm just kidding. I'm married. I'm kidding. But we got the gang here as the people who grew up watching SpongeBob. The gang's all here. We're all back. Fawad's here with me. Sean's here with me. Fawad, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but I'm happy to be back, and my next couple of weeks are lighter too, so good things all around.
And Sean, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Happy to be back. I was just thinking, if we're SpongeBob, I'm feeling like Patrick hammering a board to his head with a nail. But overall, happy to be back. Appreciate you guys holding the fort down while I've been gone.
That's what we got to do. We got to support each other. So we're going to just jump right into this. We don't want this to be too long of a podcast. So we're going to jump into this one, and I'm going to kind of let Fawad and Sean talk a lot more because I'm sure you guys don't want to listen to this voice. So the very first thing we're going to talk about, obviously the season is going as about as expected. We're not winning a lot. Some games were competitive. Some games were definitely not. So of course, what comes with, not being a very competitive team, not being a very good team, is a bunch of trade rumors, a bunch of reports coming out of who's available and what other teams are wanting, and most of the ridiculous trade ideas that get thrown out there, and people run away with them thinking it's going to happen or is a possibility. So we're going to start off, instead of addressing like specific trade rumors like so-and-so for so-and-so, we're just going to kind of talk about what we feel the value of these players are. And we may even address some of those rumors, but the first player that we all kind of wanted to talk about is Jeremy Grant. He's kind of had an up and down season. The other night, I think against San Antonio, he had an unbelievable game. So I want to throw it to Fawad first. Fawad, how do you feel Jeremy Grant, just trade value, and anything you want to talk about with Jeremy Grant, go for it.
Yeah, I think he's had not as good of a season as the last two. I think I talked about it in a couple episodes where I think his defense might be a little bit better than the last couple seasons, but his offense has been a lot worse. His shot is not there. But I still think he's a very valuable piece to a lot of teams. I think, I don't know. It wasn't from teams, but I heard Kings fans say that they would really want to trade for him. Lakers fans definitely want him as well. So I think there's a lot of teams that would have interest, especially the 6 to 10 seed that kind of want to make a push to jump in the standings. So I think there's a lot of teams that have interest. What his value is a lot tougher. Like, obviously, I would hope for 2 first-round picks. I think some people mentioned that a while back. Maybe it was in the offseason, but I don't think he's been playing enough to earn that. But I think 1 pick for sure, ideally in like the mid-range, like a 15 to 20. And then ideally maybe like a young role player-ish. I'm not expecting that we're gonna get like the next, like a top 10 like young guy in the league, but I think if we can get someone who can blossom into a role player, like I don't remember what trade it was, but DiVincenzo got traded after his rookie year, after his second year. Someone who like shows potential and you think they could be a good piece a couple years down the line. So something like that. Yeah, like a mid first and a decent role player, I think is what I'm hoping for. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
And Sean, I'm gonna throw it to you too. Anything with Jeremy Grant specifically that you feel like he does, we should be getting out of him, or anything you want to add to what Fawad said?
Well, he's an interesting piece, I think. Just the way he fits, I think, is really tradable for a contending team. He doesn't need to be taking 25 shots a game. He's not really ball dominant. He can be an off the ball guy. He's a tall wing who's shooting nearly 40% from three right now. So those things are all attractive. The kind of the hang up that I think other teams are having that we're going to run into is the contract dollars are high. What I'm expecting and what I think we're in a little bit of a unique position to do is maybe get a little bit more on the return than we're expecting, and in return take on sort of a somewhat negative asset, maybe like a 2-year deal on an underperforming guy who's getting paid a lot, get that off their books and get a contending team a kind of 3-and-D swing forward who can shoot efficiently from three. And I would assume, on a team where he's engaged, play high level defense and not be a ball stopper. I think those are really attractive points to a team. And the closer we get to the deadline, the longer this season shakes out, there's going to be a team who feels like they're a piece away. And so I do like Cronin's approach of, he just recently changed his ask from 2 first-round picks to 1 and a young player, but still kind of holding strong on wanting a heavy return. And I think it's warranted for the way he can sort of be versatile and slide into an existing team pretty seamlessly instead of taking over and ball stopping for that team.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it perfectly right there. The value, we may have lowered our asking price according to a couple reports of, 1 first round and a young guy, but Jeremy Grant is the type of player that goes to a team that's one piece away and can be that missing piece. So there's value in that. It's not just we're sending him to another team that, yeah, he'll help them win, but it's not going to be as big of an impact. He's an impact player. He may not be playing great, but he also doesn't need to be the number 1 option on our team or even the number 2 for the most part. Can he be a number 2? Sometimes, but to rely on that every night, I don't know if offensively he can do it every night. Like Fawad said, he's definitely playing better defense. His shot isn't there as much as we're used to seeing, except for the Spurs game where he went absolutely crazy. But yeah, I agree. I think Jeremy Grant has value that a lot of teams want. He's a positional player that can do a little bit of a lot. No, wait a minute. This is what I get for being sick. He can do a little in a lot of different areas on the court, and I think that's something a lot of teams look for in a player in that position. So I definitely think a first and a young, promising player doesn't have to be some crazy player with huge upside, but just a young player that can contribute or develop. I think it's highly doable. I don't really have much to add. I love Jeremy Grant. I wish we had Jeremy Grant back when we had Dame. But unfortunately, those timelines just didn't really match up too well. And we're a little late there with that one. Is there any other player that you for sure want to talk about trade value? Obviously, the other 2 big names we hear a lot are Anthony Simons and Robert Williams III has also been in a lot of rumors, deservedly so. So Fawad, Sean, is there another player that you want to talk about?
Well, really quick, I have one other thing to say about Grant and his trade price that I think is kind of funny. There's all these articles coming out how we lowered the price from 2 first-round picks, likely mid-range, to 1 first-round pick and a promising young prospect. And I'm sitting here thinking like, well, what is that other first-round pick going to be? It's going to be a promising young prospect. I don't really see it as a huge drop-off in value. Mm-hmm. I mean, if anything, I think there's a benefit to knowing what you're going to get and having seen that young guy on the court. Obviously, this is all kind of just speculation until something materializes, but don't let the media fool you. Cronin's still holding out for good value, and if we do trade him for just 1 first-round pick and we get a promising young guy, just pretend we picked that promising young guy ourselves, and you'll feel better about it.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. There's one thing clear is that Cronin has no problem waiting. Like that is very clear that he's not just going to go out there and make a trade to make a trade, whereas sometimes we want that to be the case. But history in the last couple years has shown he is not just going to go out there and make a trade because he feels like he needs to. He chooses what he feels is fair value or good value, except for the Norman Powell trade. I still don't know what the hell we're doing there. But let's talk about Simons real quick because he's another hot issue. Obviously, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You guys all know how I feel about Simons. So I'm going to throw it to you first, Sean. Simons trade value. What? How you feeling?
Yeah, I think it's a much different market than we are going to get with Grant. Grant is, in my opinion, going to get moved to a contending team with a lot of veterans. Think LA type of team where he can slot in and help. Simons to me makes more sense as not a rebuilding team, but a team that's kind of coming out of a rebuild and looking for other guys to kind of build around some of their stars. Like he's been linked to the Magic plenty of times in the last year or two, and that makes sense to me. But it's not going to be a team, in my opinion, that's trying to win it all right now. And it's for some of the reasons I thought that Grant would be attractive to those teams. It's that Simons can be a ball stopper. He's not going to contribute in a huge way with the ball outside of his hands. And those contending teams don't have a role for that. They don't need that unless it's something off the bench, which, that's a whole nother issue, but just something to think about. But anyways, I do think that there's a similar market out there for Grant, similar asking price. Basketball wise, going into the year, I would have expected him to command more, being on a better salary, being younger, but he's kind of played his value down a little bit, I think, this year. I think he'll still be attractive. I think there's still a market for him, but he hasn't done himself or the Blazers any favors with the way he's played.
Well, two things. First, for the sake of our franchise and our fan base, any NBA team that is listening right now, Simons is the best player. He is so good. You want him for sure. No doubts. Does not matter. Make the cap work. You want him so bad. He is so good. But in all reality, here's probably what's going to happen. We're going to end up trading him. My guess would be to the Orlando Magic. That would be my guess. It makes sense for their roster, what they need. He's going to go to Orlando and he's going to play pretty damn good for them. He's gonna do what we've seen him do in the past and be more. You're gonna see him more energized, more engaged, and then people are gonna be like, "What the hell? Why was he not doing that for us?" Calm down, calm down. It's fine. Let him go. We let CJ go. We let Dame go. As much as it pained us to let Dame go, just let it go. It's gonna happen. It needs to happen. It's okay if he plays well. We still root for him. We're happy for him, but he's not playing well for us. I can't be convinced otherwise that he's not just a negative asset for us at this point. So let him go. Let him play basketball in Orlando where clearly he wants to be. I feel like, you can kind of tell I think he's from Orlando, so he has ties there. He wants to be there. Let him go. Just let him go. Fuad, take it away.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. Orlando's probably the best like destination for him. But because of how his season has been, I'm honestly not sure how much value he has. I think he was a slight positive at the start of the season, but now it's like I honestly don't know how much value he has because there's a lot of players who can do what he do and are probably better. I still think Orlando is probably our best shot. At the same time, I also think they're less interested as well because they've been doing well this season, really well despite injuries. So they might think that when they're healthy, that they don't want Simons anymore because he's just gonna take the ball out of Caro and Franz Wagner's hands. So I'm a little bit worried that deal might have fallen through. Not saying there was a deal, but like that potential deal fell through. I still think it does make sense for both sides. I was just looking at the the rosters and what a potential trade could work. I think so. Filler basically is we're not going to get a player back for him for sure. We're not going to get a player and a pick. I mean, so there's some filler there with Gary Harris and Cole Anthony. Maybe Cole Anthony turns out okay for us anyways, but I don't think he's going to be that. I think he is what he is at this point. And then the really interesting part, they have a 2025, so like this upcoming draft, they have Denver's pick. Not gonna be, it's not gonna be like a lottery pick. It's probably something they're okay trading. Even their own pick is probably gonna be decent. So I think they might be a team out of anyone in the league who's kind of willing to give up a first. and I think his value's dropped since the start of the season. That's probably off the table now. But I think, if from now until what is it, like mid-February, if he plays better like he has been the last couple of seasons, I think a late first like that could be on the table. So a filler in late first could be interesting. But other than that, I don't think any other team in the league would offer a first. There's probably very few that would be interested in him anyways. So it's tough, but at the end of the day, I think everyone's going to agree with this. But as long as he's off the team, it's going to be addition by subtraction. I think we need to clear the way for Scoot and for Sharp to develop a little bit more, gain some experience as a primary ball handler. So at the end of the day, even if we don't get a good return, I'm okay with it.
No, and I 100% agree. Addition by subtraction. Just moving on from him, giving Scoot and Sharp more playing time, more ball time is right there enough for me to be okay with moving him. One other team that I am kind of interested in, and I think could have potential interest in Simons, is the Spurs. And
Mm.
they've kind of soured on Keldon Johnson, and I know he's not necessarily developed into the player that everybody thought he was, but I would love to have him on our team and see what he has, what he can do. And I don't know. This is strictly just me thinking player for player. I don't know salaries match. I don't know any of that. I don't even know if San Antonio wants to move him, but I would love to figure out a way to have Keldon Johnson on our team and send Simons out. But who
I don't
knows?
see that happening, even though Johnson hasn't developed as much as the Spurs probably thought, and as most of us other people thought. I think he's still definitely a better player than Simons. So I think we would have to probably attach, hopefully, just a couple seconds to even like put that on the table. But I think generally that's probably not something they'd be interested in my opinion. But yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons I said that is looking at his stats, his minutes per game are down. It's been going down steadily each year. So they may be
And
viewing him as a player they don't necessarily need anymore.
yeah, but they also have Steph Castle, who they just drafted, and he's probably gonna win Rookie of the Year. So I don't think they want to add another guard. I guess they could use him off the bench, but I think Steph Castle's probably gonna be their main guard for the future.
He is pretty good.
And they could probably use Keldon Johnson off the bench, maybe more than Ant, but again, I don't know.
Although now let me think here. Who's their shooting guard? Because what they're running right now, they're running Chris Paul and Castle is what they're doing. Is that their starting lineup?
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I
Because
watched a couple Spurs games, but I don't remember.
Chris Paul is playing great. Like, I'm not knocking Chris Paul.
Mhm.
He's obviously not the all-star he used to be. He's still playing very good. But
Yeah.
Castle, I think his natural position is a point guard. If I recall correctly, I didn't watch a lot of college basketball, but I believe he was a point guard. You could slide.
Okay,
I mean,
so
in my opinion, Simons is a shooting guard. He can't be a point guard. So in my opinion, you move Castle there and you have Simons at your shooting guard position. But no, I get what you're saying. I do. I just, all I want is Simons gone. That's all I care about. I don't care where he goes.
so I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but I just pulled up their lineup. Castle is actually coming off the bench. So was Devin Vassell, which is surprising to me, but I think that's only because he just came back from injury, so they're probably giving him a few games off the bench. They're starting, I don't know, they're starting 3 forwards, so I don't know who technically plays the 2, but I'm guessing it's either Harrison Barnes or Julian Champagny, probably Champagny. And then they have Sohan at.
Yeah, we need to get a Spurs expert in here to figure out what their starting lineup is.
Are they still trying to run Sohan at the 1? I remember they were experimenting with that for a while.
At the 1?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
did
they were doing
for
that
his
a lot
rookie year.
last
Yeah.
year.
Mhm.
What the hell?
Yeah, it was weird.
Hey, at least
not doing that anymore.
Chauncey's smart enough to not do that.
All I know is
No,
seeing
I actually
Simons
disagree
play
though.
under Pop, seeing Simons play with Pop, a ball dominant chucker who's inefficient and a poor defender and doesn't pass the ball would be comedy, and it would probably be hell for him, and frankly he might deserve it after what he's done this season.
That
The
would
joke might be a
pretty
little bit like tasteless, or like, I don't know. We can cut it out if it's too bad, but watching Ant play on his team might give Pop another stroke.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, I mean, it would piss him off so much and frustrate him so much and stress him out. I'd believe it. Okay, real quickly, let's throw it to Robert Williams. I think we all agree. We all love Robert Williams. I think the biggest issue with him is his health. When he's healthy, he's great. The problem is when he's healthy is about 12 games a season. So it's not very, very good. If you can get some value out of him, I think we have to. I don't foresee him being a player that's ever going to not. I don't see him ever being a player that can stay healthy all season or, even play 50 or 60 games. So, Fawad, what's your thoughts on Robert Williams?
So tough to value him as a trade piece. All of what you said, when he plays, he's amazing. I think he's probably one of the better bigs in the league. Completely impacts the game in every way, especially on defense, but even on offense, he opens things up. But he plays so little that it's like, he worth, like, what is he worth? Like, I'm sure lots of teams are interested in him, but I don't know how much they're going to be willing to pay. That's kind of where I honestly don't. I have no idea what to expect in terms of trade value. I could see us getting a first. I could see us getting even like 2 late firsts from like really good contender. But then I could also see us getting nothing, like just filler from him. In which case, I think it's probably better to keep him anyways.
I agree.
Yeah, it's like nothing would surprise me in terms of Robert Williams.
And Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I'm surprised we agree on this, but I kind of feel like he's a really clear case of just hold. He's not going to have more value than to any other team than us, really, because everyone's going to talk us down with the injury piece, rightfully so. We don't, in my opinion, need to clear time for like Klingon. I think having Robert Williams is really good Aiton insurance, and I think I've seen enough from Klingon to feel pretty confident that we're going to develop him, keep him around, and clear a path for him in the future, but he's still raw. So I like keeping him, having backup for Aiton, having some depth at the front court, which, as you know, we're Blazer fans. Like, having 3 startable centers is a luxury we don't have often. And in my opinion, I think I'm probably a little bit lower on what his value might be than Fawad. I don't think we're getting first round picks for him. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong on that. And if I am, please send them today. No problem by me. But if we're talking like second round picks, veteran starters who aren't going to move the needle for us at all, why not keep him? By all counts, he's a, good locker room guy, plays a position that we could use some depth in. And, when he's on the court, he can be a real difference maker. So I don't see any reason to force a trade just to get him off our roster.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's one of those players where we're like dying to get him off the roster. But I think we all like him. I don't think really the fan base likes him when he's playing. It's weird that you have someone who's so injury prone and the team doesn't the fan base doesn't despise him because of it. Because I can think of other players that have had injury issues and everyone's like, I can't stand him. He's never healthy. I hear more like, man, I wish he was healthy because when he plays, he's so good. And it's a weird thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys hear it, but I don't really ever hear it. Every time he gets hurt, it's like, damn, he got hurt again. That sucks. And then when he's back, it's like, oh God, we love Robert Williams. So it's a weird little paradigm there.
To me, he's kind of like the forgotten guy on the roster. When he pops up and plays well, it's like a nice surprise, but you're not really building him into, your first 7 guys you think of on the team for at least the casual fan. So, having a guy like that who can pop in and win us a couple games, play hard, and defend the rim and give us some depth, I love it. So stay healthy, Rob, stick around, or if we get a first round pick, sorry, but see you later.
I agree. Anything for you, Fawad?
No, I pretty much agree. That was a good observation. I didn't notice that, but you're 100% right.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like I can think of other players that have been injury prone, and it's like all you hear about is how much we can't stand them, and we need to just be done with them. And it's like you don't really hear that with Williams. I mean, I think people would be okay if he got traded just because we know his injury history, but it's not like we're just like praying that he gets traded because of it. So it's weird. It's a weird thing. The last thing I want to say before we move to the next thing, in my opinion, any trade we make should not affect the minutes of Scoot and Sharp. Those 2 players are the players you need to develop. So in my opinion, any trade we make should not be bringing in some player that's going to cut into those minutes like drastically. If we're trading Simons away, I want full this whole season, just full bore, Sharp, Scoot, let them do their thing. I was gonna have a rant a little bit about Sharp, but because I don't feel very good, I don't necessarily want to do it tonight. So maybe next week, if I'm feeling better, we'll have a discussion about Sharp. But that's gonna tie into our next little segue here. Fawad definitely wanted to talk about Scoot. I love talking about Scoot. It's such a polarizing situation. So Fawad, I'm gonna throw it to you. What's your thoughts on Scoot here?
Yeah. You're right that Sharp needs a discussion on him, but we can push that to next week. I think what's more pressing for sure is Scoot. And I think this seems, I don't know why, but it seems like it's still a touchy subject for some people where they're like, oh, he's perfectly fine. He's just developing at his own pace. But I think you have to be concerned at this point. I'm not saying that he's a bust for sure. He's never going to become a playable NBA player or anything like that. I'm not saying anything like that at all. I'm just saying it's time to have some conversations about what is going wrong. Is there something we can do? Is it just him not being as good as we thought? Is it a Chauncey problem? A lot of people are just saying that, oh, it's because Ant is starting in front of him. I don't think that's nearly enough of a reason. That might be some factor, but I think there's a lot of issues with Scoot that go beyond just that. The other guards on the team that are playing behind Ant as well, but they're still able to find their role and carve out something that they can rely on. Whereas Scoot is, you have no idea what to expect from him on a game to game basis. Since like the first week of the season, it's been like he plays bad more often than not. So it's just not a lot of optimism there. So yeah, I was just wondering what you guys think about. Is he a bust? Is it too late for him? What can we do? Should we trade him before his value gets even worse? Like, what do we do with him?
I'm gonna
Can we
keep
even
this.
do anything?
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. I'm gonna let Sean kind of take over here. I'm not necessarily worried about Scoot. I've accepted the fact that he's not going to be a player that's probably going to score 20 points a game. Could he? Maybe. But I've accepted that I am okay with 15, 16 points a game, 8, 9 assists a game, and hope to God Sharp, develops and can be the player that's scoring 25 points a game. So I do think I think it's a plethora of things. I think Simon's, kind of taking a lot of the offense, being kind of ball dominant. All the offense pretty much going through Simons for the most part. I think Billups is a big part of that as well, because I think his offensive schemes do not necessarily scream great basketball for the type of player Scoot is. And I think we all kind of knew. This is one of the things I think a lot of people get caught up in is, any player that gets drafted after you trade Dame away, you're going to compare him to Dame. And I'm not necessarily saying you're doing that, Fawad, but a lot of people just expected, and part of that's the media's fault for, saying he's such a generational talent and he's going to be such a great player. And, everyone hears that and then expects it because you have Dame who comes to us, plays so well for us. And then you get Scoot, who just like, we knew coming into the draft, he's not the greatest shooter. He's not the best pull up, jump shoot, mid-range shooter. He definitely doesn't shoot the three very well, although he's done okay this year. It's not great, but it's not horrid. It's not great though. So I think a lot of people had their expectations so high that with him, and I can acknowledge that he's not playing very well, but I do see flashes of what I think he could be, and I think that's something worth developing. But that's the problem right now, is we're not really developing him. So Sean, I'm gonna throw it to you. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between. He reminds me of if you know, like the Jason Tatum meme when he was young, like he's only 21 doing all this. And for Scoot, we're constantly getting, he's only 20, he'll be fine. But at a certain point, like you got to take the kid gloves off. Like he's been in the league now for 2 years. He hasn't done much of anything. It's been inefficient. It feels like we're kind of pigeonholing him into lineups when he's normally a net negative on the team, even though our whole team our roster's bad, and he's a playmaker, and obviously that hurts his assist numbers and things like that. But yeah, man, the biggest thing I feel like with him is just like, what did everybody miss? Like, it's rare that I see a prospect like this universally lauded, and you just don't see it from day one. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of development from when he came in the league to now. I mean, I understand there's like those first few months where it was really bad, and it's better than that. But he hasn't made any of the major jumps you'd expect or hope. Um, so yeah, I mean, Alex, I agree with you that he's definitely not a 20-point scorer, but that doesn't mean he can't help the team. But I don't think he's there yet. And honestly, I don't know that he'll ever get there. I think it's probably more likely that he's going to be either a bench player or a net negative than it is that he'll be an all-star at any point of his career, just off what I've seen. And I would love to be wrong. I was a huge Scoot guy coming in. But I mean, at a certain point, like, I've caught myself making excuses for him so many times for so many different reasons. At some point, you were the third overall pick. You do need to be held accountable, and we do need to kind of turn off the rose tinted glasses and really look at his body of work, which frankly just isn't impressive.
No, and I very well could be doing that. I could be still making excuses. Part of me knows what team we have and knows a player whose real strength right at this moment is playmaking. With the roster that we put out there, it's going to be tough. It's going to be ugly, especially when you have, like I mentioned, offensive game plan that is just pick and rolls constantly and triple dribble handoffs and not much to it other than that. It makes it difficult. And then you add in the fact that no one's really shooting well. We don't have that many great shooters, and the shooters we do have aren't shooting very well.
Yeah.
So it kind of like it all stacks up to kind of the deck is against him, where he's right now really what he's good at is attacking the basket. He may not finish everything, but he can attack the basket. He can draw fouls. He is a good playmaker. He can create for other people. Sometimes he gets a little out of control, gets a little wild. But then, when he does make the right play and he's kicking it to an open player, most of the time those players are missing. And it's like, that's a stat that gets lost because it's like you don't track missed open shots or missed good shots or missed, hockey assists or something like that. It's like we don't see a lot of it. It's hard to really, unless you're like hardcore watching each game and taking notes and that's something I've started doing is kind of like watching these games and like picking one player and being like, okay, I'm going to watch this guy for the next couple games and keep notes of good things they've done and bad things they've done. And maybe that's something I do with Scoot here soon and trying to really compare the good things he's done that I feel he's done and the bad things. And then we can talk about that as well. Anything else? Go for it, Fuad.
Yeah, they actually do track the potential assists, like when you pass the guy and he misses the shot. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know exactly where Scoot ranks on our team or in the league. But for next episode, I can look that up.
Yeah, I'd like.
Yeah.
Also, regarding some of what you said earlier, like I don't know if that he can be like if you're expecting maybe a 15 and 8 guy instead of a 20 and whatever guy like that he was hyped up to be. I don't know if I even see that 15 and 8 anymore. It's looking bleak out there. There's not like I'm forcing myself to see the positives when I'm watching him play, and I don't think that's the way the way any of us should be approaching someone who was as highly touted as he was. And I understand that some of it like was maybe unfair, maybe he shouldn't have had that much hype, but at the same time, it's even if you try to ignore whatever expectations were set in a vacuum, I don't think he's been good like a positive player period. Even if he was drafted like 30th, they've been like, oh, this guy's just a bust, but it's a 30th pick, so who cares? It was likely that he's a bust anyways. I think wherever he was picked, he was probably going to be a disappointment. It's just worse because he's number 3.
With that logic, Fawad, like if he was a 30th pick, I think we might already moved on. It's
exactly, yeah.
We're forcing it a little bit, and I understand why. I mean, like, what's plan B at this point? Like, reset it again. No Blazer fan wants that. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't flashed enough consistently over the course of like an entire game. Like you see moments of it within a game, but he hasn't put together enough complete games for me to feel comfortable with him as a player moving forward.
Honestly, if he had been the 30th pick, I'm not confident that he'd even be getting minutes right now, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed.
Let me
Maybe that's going a little bit too far, but that's like my point is he has not been great.
He'd be a fringe guy, you know, he'd be a 10 minutes a game guy potentially.
let me be a Scoot advocate here for just a quick
Please.
second. I 100% get what you guys are saying. I really do. The one thing I can say though is when you're as young as he is, confidence and I mean confidence is a big thing. And when you're picked to be, you know, when you're the third pick and you hear all the chatter about being a generational talent and being such a good player, and in any other draft he'd be the number 1 pick. You hear all that hype, you're expected to have that kind of impact right away. Then you come to a team that is not ready to compete really, and then you end up coming off the bench behind a player who's not performing very well in the first place, and you're still not able to get past that. And then on top of that, you have a coach who, granted, he may be a great player coach, but the X's and O's just do not seem to be there for John. So then it's like he's not getting the confidence he needs to develop any more than what he already is. And then, like you guys just said, it's like we're forcing these minutes because we don't really have another option. I feel like he also feels that he has to force and try to prove everybody like, hey, I can be the third pick. I should have been the first picker, you know? And then when you're on a team that's not performing very well, you're forcing everything to try to prove something when really all we want is development. Scoot shows flashes of being a good defender. Scoot shows flashes of being able to attack the basket and finish at the basket. He really hasn't shown much in the jump shooting, you know, part of his game. But I think one of the big things is for these young players, confidence is a big thing. And when you're not really getting a lot of playing time and and then you're hearing all this in the background of, you know, he was a third pick, what a bust already, and he's 20 years old, that's going to mess with his head. I mean, I could only imagine being 20 years old in the NBA. I can remember graduating high school and going to college and playing, you know, basketball with all the college basketball players for a community college and being intimidated by dudes that are 2 years older than me and feeling like, man, I'm so much better. I should be playing more, and then not getting to play because these guys you know, they've done their time. They've earned playing time. So it's hard. I'm not necessarily trying to defend Scoot, but I can see. I don't know. Maybe I gotta take these glasses off. Maybe that's what it is.
No, it's fair. I think that's fair. I think it's a nuanced situation, and he has plenty of time to prove us wrong. And like whether, you know, guys like Fawad, I don't think he should have the long leash that he has. He does, and he's gonna have every opportunity to prove it on the court. So ultimately, I just want to say, like, I'm rooting for him. I hope I'm wrong. I just can't say I've seen it, but if it's there, and like I said, there's flashes. So if he can put it together, like, no one would be happier than me. And you're absolutely right to point out the mental part. Like, I mean, when I was 20, God, what was I doing? I probably can't say it on this podcast, but you know, it was far from responsible. And so, you know, he's got a lot of things to figure out on the court and potentially off. So I hope he does.
And one other thing is, you know, when we drafted CJ, when we drafted Simons, granted Simons was later in the draft. I think CJ was like, what pick was he? He was fairly early, wasn't he?
12 or something.
Yeah, he was fairly early. Like, we saw very small flashes when we first had them, and they didn't play very much. But we saw little flashes, small little flashes. CJ, you know, was adamant about like his game was like pre-game warm-ups and like the walkthroughs. Like that was his game. So he was always working. That was essentially him playing. And so it's like things we never saw. And then when he did get in, we saw flashes. Same with Simon's first couple years. We saw little flashes, and then both CJ and Simons kind of took off. Whereas we're seeing Scoot just getting thrown into it. We're seeing flashes every once in a while, but expecting so much more because of the hype that he had and because we picked him so early. I mean, it's kind of like the reverse of Dame. A lot of people didn't know who Dame was when we drafted him. He comes in and immediately is just like showing you why he was picked so early. And a lot of people I feel like I even remember when we drafted him saying, I don't even know who this guy is. And like not really knowing much about him. And then just like it didn't take long for you at all to be like, this guy has it. And maybe Scoot doesn't have what Dame has. And unfortunately the third pick kind of got wasted there. But only time will tell. And I like you, Sean, I hope it works out. To say I'm not like convinced that it won't work out, I definitely could. I definitely am more afraid that it won't work out than that it will work out. Let's put it that way.
I could say, hey, Scoot, prove me wrong, man.
One last thing before we throw it to you, Sean. Last night, my wife was looking at some pictures on her phone, and I decided I was going to get on YouTube instead of look at pictures. And I went down a rabbit hole of reminiscing with Damian Lillard. And good God, do I miss not just Damian Lillard in general, but the type of basketball we played. Like I'm watching like Rodney Hood, and I'm watching Maurice Harkless, and obviously Wesley Matthews and Batum and Aldridge. And it's like, I know Fawad and I had talked about it in, episodes prior to Dame being traded, but we had it so good. And I don't think we even realized how good we had it. And just reminiscing with all the games and watching all the Dame games. And I forced myself to watch like the highlights of that game 5 against Denver. And like, God, we were so lucky to have that. And I want to get back to something that resembles that. It doesn't have to be 50-point games every night, but just something that resembles competitive, fun basketball. So hopefully we get there. But God, it was heartbreaking, but also I enjoyed it a lot last night. I watched way too much of it.
Yeah,
One quick
Alex,
thing.
we can
Okay,
skip
sorry,
my
go
last.
for it.
Oh, go ahead, Fawad. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go.
I was gonna say we can skip my last thing because I actually was just thinking about this, and like the older I get, when I was younger, I'm just hyper fixated on championships, and that's all that mattered. The older I get, man, I want to go to the Moda Center and enjoy the game and see the stadium filled up and be able to talk to my coworkers about the Blazers and like watch guys go for 30. And this current iteration of the Blazers is like, obviously we're not good, but at the same time we're playing a very not fun brand of basketball to watch, where it's just like grinded out defense, which some people might be into. It's not my thing. So it's tough to be a fan, So kind of where I'm at is where we're at in the season right now. I think we're like 6th in the tank for flag race. And man, we got to get one of those top spots. We got to secure one of those top 3 guys. I think it's a really top heavy draft, great prospects, and we've been kind of floundering for a while. I think we've seen enough out of like our quote unquote core pieces to know that, I mean, safely can say none of them are superstar level, I think. And to win in the NBA, it's like next to impossible without any sort of superstar power. So it's a weirdly important year, in my opinion, to do really bad. So Chauncey, I need you to lock in and do what you do best and get us to the top of that tank order, because I can't, another 7th overall pick, 6th overall pick that's going to be playing 20 minutes a game and is a solid piece is just not going to cut it at this point.
And before I throw it to you, Fawad, I just want to add one thing to what you said. I don't remember ever hearing our crowd boo, ever. Not boo our own team, not boo the other team.
Yeah.
I've heard it multiple times. The arena itself, although we still have a pretty good turnout for what we're putting out there product-wise, I've never seen so few people. It feels like people kind of don't, they're just so fed up with everything that's happened that they just don't even care. And to be honest with you, I don't necessarily like enjoy coming on and doing podcasts talking about the same things over and over again, because it's all we can talk about, because nothing's changing. Like I enjoy talking Blazers basketball, but when it's like our podcasts are the same episodes almost every time, because what else are we supposed to talk about? Simons comes out and sucks. Ayton half the time doesn't look like he wants to play. Billups doesn't look like he knows what the hell he's doing, other than shaking hands with the other coach and pretending to be mad at people when the camera's on him. It's like, what else do we talk about? Do we just start talking about the good old days? Do we talk about 1977 when we won an NBA championship? Shout out to Chris Burkhart, who has his own podcast now called, I think it's called 1977. So if you guys are listening, check out his podcast as well. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I've never heard our own fan base boo the Blazers, and I've heard it multiple times. Anyways, Fawad, you were wanted to add something?
I'm good. That moment passed like minutes ago. I don't even remember what I was gonna say. I'll just end off with like, I agree that it's tiring to just see the same issues over and over again, and they're not being fixed or improved at all. So yeah, I agree that it gets exhausting at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I've said, for me, all I care about is it's competitive basketball. I enjoyed watching that Spurs game. That was a fun game. We lost. I was okay with the loss because it was competitive. We hung in there. Jeremy Grant had a great third quarter. That was enjoyable to watch. But the competitiveness is just not consistently there. That's the problem with me. For me, is it's just you never know what you're going to get each game. You don't know if it's going to be a competitive game. You don't know if it's going to be a blowout. You don't know if we're going to have the lead for most of the game. Like it's, when we had Dame, we knew it was going to at least be competitive. We knew for the most part every game was going to be fairly close, whether we lost or won. But this team, it's like I don't know if we're going to lose by 40 or win by 2. Like it's one of those two. We're going to win barely or we're going to get destroyed. It seems like it's always one of those. So it's just, it gets old. It's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to convince myself to stay up till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and even later for you, Fawad, to watch these games. And I don't know. I love Blazer Vision. I know we've talked about that in the past. It's just such a crappy year to introduce Blazer Vision because it's so hard for me to want to watch these games.
I'll add one thing to my idea to fix it, because it's not going to be championship basketball anytime soon. We got Scoot playing 25 minutes or something a game. Throw him out there for 35. Like let's see it, man. Like, and if he sucks for 35 minutes, he sucks for 35 minutes. Like losing a game is not a problem, but this bringing along slowly thing isn't working. Like, I think you got to put him out there, let him sink or swim a little bit, let him take his knocks and take his lumps. But like, that's what people, like, fans want to see it. And we, even on this podcast, as people who watch like most of the games and are pretty tuned in, we can't even agree if he's a guy or not. Like, we should know now. So like, throw him out there. Let's freaking see it for real starter minutes for a season and just see if it's something that we can build around or if it's time to turn the page. But this 20 minutes a game thing and babying him along, like if we're really serious about him being the kind of prospect that we thought he was, it's time to see it. So I would rather him go out there and suck for 35 minutes than keep playing 20 minutes and suck. Like, who knows? Maybe he'll figure something out. The game will slow down for him and he'll figure it out. But, if it leads to more losses in the short term, that's no problem by me.
I agree. The only thing I'd be worried about is if the franchise really does believe in him and we do put him out there for that long, the only thing I'm concerned about is if he does struggle, that we don't allow him to develop bad habits. Like if they believe in him and they want him to be a player and they put him out there for 35 minutes, bad habits can't be something he develops and carries on for the next 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I have to say. Fawad, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
And for the record, Sean, I agree. Put him out there 35 minutes. Let's just see what we got. Give him the keys, let him drive. That's what you drafted him for. All right. If you guys are still here, thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with me. I talked more than I thought I was going to, honestly. Once again, Shout out to Chris Burkhart and the podcast. I looked it up, the 1977. His episodes are 20 minutes and 17 seconds long, or 1977, which is a cool little tie in there. So if you guys haven't already checked him out, check him out. Chris is awesome. He's got some tie-ins with the Blazers. I still believe he does radio. Actually, I know he still does radio for them. So check out Chris. Fawad, Sean, thank you guys for being here tonight. And hopefully we start to see some changes here. Maybe we get some news of some trades, although I highly doubt it until the trade deadline. But who knows? We'll see. Thank you all for listening. And as always, Rip City, baby. Thanks to My Life Pursuing for the music used on the intros and the outros of this podcast. You can check them out on all major streaming platforms at My Life Pursuing.